Hi everyone, I'm going to talk a bit about my development of Escape from Castle Doom. It's my first game for a game jam, and I thought I'd use it as a something to learn a bit about the Godot engine. I've done a little bit of playing around in the engine beforehand, but not anything major. This is all being recorded after the fact, so after the game was submitted, because I didn't have time to do anything while it was actually happening. So what thought I'd do is just go through a bit of my process, really. So what did I do? I started by taking a look at the tile sheet which we had been given and trying to see anything that looked interesting. So the things that immediately jumped out to me were the duck, because I like ducks, and the little wizard character down here. I thought he might be a nice player character because I can see doing magic and stuff with wizards. At least he looked like a wizard to me anyway. So I thought I'd take him, and I'd take the duck. I've actually recolorized the duck here because I was testing some stuff out. And once I decided I was going to make a game about that and the duck, I also decided I wanted to do something in 3D because I like doing stuff in 3D. So very first thing I did was I decided I didn't like the colours in this palette very much. They're a bit too in your face. So I went and had a look on lowspec.com. And that has a load of different palettes. So I went through and found something that I liked, and once I'd found that, I started taking stuff out of this giant sprite sheet and recoloring it with the stuff from the palette which I liked, which was this one. And from there, I ended up with like little recolored things. Not everything ended up making it into the game, but I had some ideas, and I also recolored and built all this stuff for the walls. Once I'd got some of these textures drawn, I decided to make some 3D stuff out of all of these shapes. So I went over to Blender, and in Blender I basically put together all these little cubes which are the same size, which was what I was going to use for doing the levels. So each of them are textured, and they're all for different things. Like this one is like a wall piece with like a thing which joins it onto two edges. This is just some floor. There's a corridor here somewhere, so this one's corridor, and various bits. There's also spikes and things over here, and stairs. Just kind of did a bit of modelling and textured it. From here, I exported everything, and then I could actually get stuff coming into Godot for the first time. Brought stuff in, made a mesh lib out of all of that 3D geometry, and then using that and the grid map tool, you can actually choose stuff directly from within here that I've exported. So I could choose like this end of corridor thing, and I can just draw it all over the map wherever I want it. So once I'd made the mesh lib, I built some collision detection stuff or colliders into it, and then just started painting levels. Like this was the first test level that I made. It kind of grew as I was developing stuff, but I basically made like a room and a few other little things coming off from the room. And then tried to get a player character up and running. So I wrote a little bit of scripting stuff for the player and added him in, and had a little guy running around with collision detection and levels that I could draw, which was quite nice to see. It happened quite quickly. So once I got a tileable environment up and running, it was time to do a bit of work on the player. So I added a 3D sprite and added a collision object to him. Angled him up a little bit so that the camera was looking down on him. He didn't look too weird. I didn't want it too low because I wanted him to still look like he was standing upright, even though the camera was at a sharper angle than he was. From there, I then added a few little animations, which I did within the Godot editor. So I've got a little run animation here. I just added keyframes on rotation, translation, and scaling in order to make him look like he's running. I've got another one where he's just breathing, idle, if you're not moving, just scales up and down. And I've got one where he dies, where he just sort of falls on his side. And then I've got some scripting which can play the various ones at the appropriate points. Then there's some stuff around doors, which I also set up using animations as well. So this door is basically an object which is animated, so I can animate it to turn 90 degrees, and I also animated the collider to also turn, so that when the door is triggered by this area object around it, so if the player goes into this area, it will trigger the door and the door will open. I've also added some scripting to make it a bit easier to kind of deal with that. So some doors you can't open without keys. So I added this kind of generic system where it has a requires variable, which you can type in what it needs, and here it just typed in red key. And then you can also create pick-upable like objects which have like a certain graphic associated with them, and you know, you can, with this pickupable, you can choose what type of item it is. It's red key. That's basically just set to string. And then this thing is just basically switching on a string. You can literally type anything you want in here to have a various set of requirements in order to be able to have the door opened. I set up some little torches to add a bit more interest to the scene, and also have it do some lighting. I animated the lights to make them flicker a bit as well, which looked quite nice. I wanted to have more stuff actually in the levels, like tables and things, but I didn't have time to model it in the end with all the level building I needed to do as well. So after I'd done that, it was a case of trying to get things happening in the world. So I went through and kind of designed some particle systems for things like the magical blasts and things. So you just create a thing with that in it, and then made him able to fire them, and then decided that I wanted some enemies, so I just put a goblin thing in, added a collider, and made them, when they're within a certain range, run towards the player. And that's basically all the logic that they have. When they get close to the player, then the player takes some damage. Added a little kind of invulnerability thing to it. And what else? Then it was just kind of building levels, really. I decided that I wanted some spikes and things to jump over, and it kind of morphed more into a platforming style thing. Originally it was going to be a bit more of a puzzle game, but I realised that halfway through that puzzles were hard and I didn't have much time, so turned it a bit more into a platformer and monster defeating type thing. And so from there it was just a case of polishing stuff, really. So going through, building lots of levels, drawing some graphics to help people being able to know what they're supposed to do without needing to write a whole block of text. Adding things to change levels, and yeah, then the whole thing kind of came together. The last level was added some greenery and some grass, added some timers to kind of count things, and it all came together. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out, really. One thing I didn't like too much was having to place each of these blocks manually. I'm pretty sure for the 2D version of the grid mat, the tile mat, you can set it to auto tile stuff, but I didn't spend enough time working out how to do that for 3D. So if it's possible, it'd be great if you could let me know, because that would have saved me a lot of time. But I built them all manually for this. That's it, really. It wasn't, without delving into all the code and stuff like that, it's turned out really well. I'm pleased with what I managed to achieve in the time, and probably keep going with it and try and do some more game jams in the future. Thanks for listening, and see you later.